Jeff Parry reports.
This is a licence plate flipper. Its only purpose is to evade detection by roadside cameras or pursuing police. It's not the only method bikers use to escape the law. There's aerosol spray and plastic shields designed to obscure the plates from cameras.
We're talking about a small cohort of people who I believe are more willing to engage in criminal activity.
The government says the penalty for tampering or obscuring plates will be increased from $50 to $1,000 and trigger a police crackdown.
They'll be pulling motorcyclists over who have damaged plates, obscured plates or devices to try and avoid detection.
But there's no action plan to reintroduce front-mounted licence plates, which allows some bike riders to taunt the authorities and get away with it. Police have to go to extraordinary lengths to prove to courts that the accused is the man in the photograph. The Minister says reintroducing front-mounted plates is easier said than done.
We would need the agreement of all of the states.
The opposition says government should be examining new technology like microchipping bikes.
The best road safety brains in the country need to come together.
Jeff Parry, 7 News.
And later, Today Tonight joined police on a motorcycle blitz with riders caught on camera taking dangerous risks.
Australia has begun
20 vehicles on WA streets. A quarter of all accidents involve a motorbike. Cassie Silver joined WA Police during a coordinated road blitz in a bid to catch out drivers flouting the rules.
It's not a toy to be played with. You fall off and die. These people are either going to kill themselves, kill somebody else, or put other road users in situations they just should not be in.
There's never been any love lost between motorists and motorcycles, and it's causing major headaches and heartache on our streets. So who's to blame, and what's really going on our roads? Sunday morning in Mundaring, and bikers are out enjoying the quiet roads. Constable Simon Hutchinson and Tony Wooler are looking for bikers breaking the rules.
Yeah, we're just looking for general speeding offences on this road.
Just minutes along Mundaring Weir Road, we hear revs coming towards us. Speeding past at nearly twice the legal limit, we clock him doing 119 in a 60 zone.
That's a roadside impound. That's reckless driving.
This biker is clearly in a hurry to get somewhere.
My wife's having a baby.
Really?
Literally right now, she's at the hospital.
Constable Wooler isn't convinced it's a reason to speed.
Yeah, well, if she's at the hospital, then she's obviously in good hands, so there's no need for you to be travelling at that speed, mate.
Some motorcyclists might think, well, it's only me, it's my life, it's my gamble, I'm prepared to take that gamble. That's rubbish.
WA Police State Traffic Commander Al Fordham says there's no excuse for speeding.
Years ago, I went to a traffic crash where a motorcycle cut a vehicle in half. If you want to get your thrills riding a motorcycle that way, drive at 110 in a 110 zone or drive on a racetrack and join a club.
Back in Mundaring, this bloke's bike is being seized.
As a result of his speed, his motorcycle is going to be impounded for 28 days and he's going to be charged with reckless driving.
Back in the car, police pull over another motorcycle rider.
Are you aware that it's a 70 limit here? Yeah. You are? OK, you're doing 83 there, mate.
And that's not the only thing that's got police concerned.
Yeah, do you have your licence on you, perchance?
So this biker was just caught doing 83 kilometres in a 70 zone, so he'll be expecting a loss of 2 demerit points and a $150 fine. But this biker is also riding with the wrong kind of licence, so that's $100 on top of that. But the worst thing is, he can't ride this bike home. He'll need to ring someone else to ride it home for him.
Just give it a quick go and you're out of class.
According to Constable Wooler, the bike is too powerful for the licence he holds.
A traffic infringement notice for riding his motorcycle out of class. And I've given him a caution for the speed because he's got the infringement for riding out of class. It's a $100 fine, there's no points.
From now on, he'll need to stick to a bike with only 250 cc's of power and find someone else to drive this one home.
You're cheating the very safeguards that we as a community are putting in place to try and make sure motorcycle riders are safe.
From the wide open roads to our busy freeways, it's peak hour on the Mitchell Freeway and police are conducting a coordinated blitz. While 2 officers wait beside the road on the overpass ahead, Sergeant Simon Baxter has the radar on riders. impatience one of the biggest problems at peak hour, this motorcyclist is taking a shortcut in the emergency lane. A quick radio to patrol officers Constable Sumner and Kazali just metres away, and they're on his tail.
Well, what's that going to cost him today?
That one's $150 using a emergency lane, and it'll be 3 demerit points as well, because he's using an emergency lane as another lane, which it shouldn't be.
Might seem like a harmless rule to break, but in the past decade, 7 lives have been lost in emergency lane accidents.
They're there for cars to break down in, to pull off the road in emergency situations, not so that motorcycles can cheat the rules and get to work or their destination more quickly than anyone else.
Then there's the drivers who simply can't wait for anyone. Cars, bikes, trucks, cutting each other off left, right and centre.
Not to get angry, not to get even, not to do something silly.
As to whether bikes or cars are to blame, well, that depends on who's behind the wheel. But if we're all going to get along on our roads, police are urging all drivers to stick to the rules and no one gets hurt.
I can tell you now that we're going to put a lot of effort over the next 6 months or so into catching as many of those people as we possibly can.
Cassie Silver there. You only have to see the cranes on the skyline to know that Perth is undergoing a massive transformation. Tonight we take you inside and underneath the Elizabeth Quay construction site for an exclusive look at how the river will meet the city. Here's Mark Gibson.
So where we are, that will be water, that will be land.
That's right.
It's a 10-hectare, $3 billion construction site that'll change our city forever.
This project is all about transforming Perth.
If you think progress at Elizabeth Quay seems a little slow,
a lot is not immediately visible because it's underground.
Take a look at the engineering feats they're pulling off below the surface.
From an engineering point of view, it's pretty exciting.
Anthony Durlow from Leighton Broad is the project manager, keen to show us that the underground walls they're working on now will lay the foundations for the whole development.
The diaphragm wall process paves the way for all the works to follow.
It's taken just over 2 years to get this far, from April 2012, when you could still drive all the way along Riverside Drive, to now with traffic diverted up Barrack Street as hundreds of workers set about creating our Swan River inlet. And this is what Elizabeth Quay will eventually look like, with the man-made island and pedestrian bridge at the bottom of your screen. Here's a closer view of the 150-metre bridge, which ferries will travel under to get to their new terminal. On the eastern side, there'll be a Ritz-Carlton hotel with 2 luxury apartment towers offering incredible views. So back to construction of those underground walls.
So the first thing we do is we dig a trench and we set up the guide walls, which will guide the alignment of the diaphragm wall.
Once the temporary walls are in, they start the excavation process, where a giant claw removes huge amounts of soil from below ground.
So that's what we see there, where it's going down.
Yep, taking bites of material, putting it in a truck, and that goes away.
A type of liquid clay is added to stop the earth collapsing. Then these massive steel cages are sent into the trenches 20 metres below the surface before concrete is pumped in and your underground wall is built.
In the scale of things, it's one of the more complex and technical pieces we're going to do on Elizabeth Quay.
It's a process that started in March. The 1 kilometre wall should be finished by August. It's made harder by the fact the walls aren't straight. Instead, they'll zigzag around the inlet.
One misconception is that the river will come all the way through to the esplanade, but it'll stop here. Where I'm standing will be the new Riverside Drive, and behind me there'll be at least 4 big buildings, including offices and apartments, between here and the esplanade.
It is certainly on time and on budget, and we expect all of the public areas to be completed by about November of next year.
So exactly what will be open in 17 months? There'll be the inlet, the bridge, the island, along with boardwalks, playgrounds, 24 boat moorings and a Transperth ferry terminal. And tonight, Planning Minister John Day reveals exclusive designs of 3 new restaurants and cafes. This green 3-storey venue on the northern side of the water, a modern glass structure on the eastern promenade, and the old Florence Hummerston kiosk, which used to house a Chinese restaurant, to be rebuilt on the island.
We want it to be a place where people can come and get an ice cream, or whether they can come and get a coffee, have lunch, have a drink and engage in what is going to be, I think, a really attractive part of Perth.
The government's now calling for expressions of interest. They're after a mix of fine dining and cheap and cheerful.
This is a really exciting project to be involved with.
Currently, a limestone and granite wall is keeping the river out. The wall will be broken around the middle of next year to let the water in. But don't expect the big buildings, the apartments and office towers, to be finished until 2018.
I think we're going to end up with a very exciting and interesting precinct similar to South Bank in Melbourne or Darling Harbour in Sydney or the waterfront in Auckland, all of which have been very successful.
Mark Gibson there. And for more on Elizabeth Key, see tomorrow's West Australian. Now to the former Olympian who's returned from a broken back. We're joined by Mark Reddings for Sport Extra. And Mark, what an amazing comeback.
That's right, Monica. Olivia Vivian would have to be one of the toughest gymnasts in the world after not only breaking her back, but also dealing with personal tragedy. Incredibly, and against all odds, she's back competing and in form, preparing to represent Australia at this year's Commonwealth Games.
When you talk about adversity, there's the injuries, there's the teenage years where she was so difficult to coach.
It's still competitive and it's still a rivalry, but we have that mutual respect.
You know, I've done Olympics, I've done World Champs, I haven't done a Com Games.
For every magic moment in her career, she's had more than her share of tough times.
I love to make it really difficult for myself.
Incredibly, less than 12 months ago, Olivia Vivian was couch-bound after breaking her back in 2 places and tearing a disc.
Not allowed to sit, not allowed to walk, I had to lie down.
In a sport where gymnasts push themselves to the limit, Olivia's body gave way while practising a signature move.
There's this new skill on bars that no one's ever done before, and so if I'm the first to do it, it gets called the Vivian. You have to do it at a World Champs or Olympic Games, though.
And the risks are high.
There's a reason it's never been done before, OK? And so I did one and I was like, oh, that felt a bit wrong. It's very taxing on the back.
Olivia avoided surgery, but she's put the routine on the back burner until after the Commonwealth Games.
Strange movement going from the high bar down to the low bar, but it has a very unnatural turn and twist on the back. And I think we just did too many in a short amount of time.
She does put in a lot of work and she's always trying to find new skills.
Lauren Mitchell is a world champion who trains alongside Olivia and is also heading to Glasgow.
I was listening to the radio this morning and they were joking about the Soccer World Cup, and they're like, oh, you know, all the old veterans, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, can you have really a young veteran? And they're like, well, actually, gymnasts. And I was driving, I was like, oh, that's me, Olivia.
I'm definitely grandma.
So you're saying you're a grandma at how old?
24.
24? Oh, you're over the hill, Olivia.
I swear, though, my joints are like 70 in here.
Right from the start, there have been challenges for Olivia.
I was born with diaphragmatic hernia, which is definitely not very common, and 1 in 3 survive the operation that follows.
But it was last year when her world came crashing down, losing her father, Craig, to cancer.
I remember the funeral, and people that I'd never met before came up to me and they'd tell me that my father had never stopped bragging about how proud he was of me and my brother Trent, and he talked about the Beijing Olympics just on and on and on.
Dad and daughter made one final pact.
The last conversations I remember having with my father, he said, go for Rio.
Her first priority is to get to Glasgow in one piece.
She's got a huge personality and she's a lot of fun, but she's also very stubborn.
Martine George is Olivia's long-time coach. The pair have had their ups and downs.
She's almost becoming more coachable every year. So, you know, by the time she's 34, who knows? She might do everything we say. It'll be great.
But they're united in their goal for this year.
You aim for nothing less than gold in Glasgow.
And after all she's been through, Olivia has a simple competition motto.
I've always loved the win without boasting, lose without excuse.
Yes, and Olivia will compete in the teams competition at the Glasgow Games, where the Aussies are defending gold medalists. Swan.
And we wish her the best. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Coming up on Today Tonight, the home printer that builds.
To jewellery, makeup, even family homes.
A Queen's Rocks man has admitted killing a Sudanese refugee after running him over on a suburban street. Family of the victim, William Maker, say he died trying to save others from the speeding driver. Sylvana Sikorsky was in court.
William Maker moved to Australia from Sudan for a better life, a life tragically cut short after he was run down by a speeding driver in Merewa last year. The 29-year-old who'd been waiting for a bus stepped onto the road, hoping the driver would slow down. Today outside court, his family remembered him as a hero.
My brother died for the community. He wanted to do the right thing, to slow someone down.
After initially pleading not guilty to murder, 24-year-old repeat drink driver Luke David Taylor today changed his plea to guilty and admitted to driving without a licence. A friend warned Taylor not to drive that morning, saying he'd probably kill someone. The court was told Mr Maker was intoxicated at the time of the incident with a blood alcohol level of 0.295. Prosecutor Les Hobson said it was such a callous act to not stop and just drive away. Taylor's lawyer urged the judge not to impose a life sentence. If that does happen, he'll be the first convicted murderer in WA to not be given the life term. Defence lawyer Mark Trowell argued his client drove at Mr Maker with the intention to get him off the road. In a letter read out to the court, Taylor said, "I'm so sorry," adding it was an unthinkable, cowardly act, a split-second decision I'll have to live with forever.
Well, we've forgiven him. And whether he's sentenced for life or 50 years or whatever, it won't bring William back. That's the bottom line.
Taylor will be sentenced next week. Sylvana Sikorsky, 10 Eyewitness News.
The driver has been caught on camera doing double the speed limit south of Perth. The vehicle has been seized, joining what police are describing as a sea of cars impounded for hooning. Daniel Donnelly reports.
Reaching speeds of more than 200 kilometres per hour. The driver of this Nissan GTR has no idea he's been watched from above.
Oh, he's beating us.
The dangerous driving was caught on camera by the police helicopter last month. The driver heading north on the Kwinana freeway in the early hours of the morning.
Really, you reckon its speed at the moment is probably pushing up to 180.
Police say a 26-year-old Applecross man was behind the wheel. He's been charged with reckless driving and his car was impounded for 28 days. It's one of 897 vehicles that have already been seized this year.
Some of these people just see it as their right. They own a vehicle like that, they should be able to drive it as they wish. And we disagree with that point of view.
Police say the drivers of these impounded vehicles are members of a car club. When officers pulled them over, they found a memory card in this car. On it, a video allegedly showing the group racing in Perth South.
If we can separate a Hoon driver, a reckless, antisocial driver from their vehicle, we know that at least they can't use that vehicle as a weapon in our communities.
Another Hoon caught on camera, the 40-year-old driver of this Holden Commodore, clocked at 226 kilometres per hour in a 90 zone near Mandurah.
If that vehicle was to crash, it would be an absolute catastrophe, and a number of people would probably be damaged in some way by that crash.
Daniel Donnelly, 10 Eyewitness News.
Major risk. Rick.
Thanks, Alexis. A Perth driver has admitted he should never have been behind the wheel when he ran down and killed a man in Perth's north. The terrible details of Luke Taylor's deadly Hoon driving include speeding up, hitting the innocent man and then fleeing the scene before drinking champagne. Tracy Moran reports.
William Maker moved to Perth from war-torn Sudan, only for his life to end on the side of a Perth street, taken by a Hoon driver as Mr Maker waved his hands at the car to slow down.
My brother died for the community. He wanted to do the right thing, to slow someone down.
Luke David Taylor should have never been behind the wheel. The unlicensed serial drink driver didn't brake or even swerve before he hit the 29-year-old, who he left critically injured, to drive home and drink champagne with a friend. Despite it all, William Maker's grieving family forgives him.
We forgave him a long time ago, because otherwise if we don't forgive him, we will live with more problems.
Before the crash, a friend tried to take Taylor's car keys, saying, "You're being stupid, you will probably kill someone." His sister asked, "Why are you driving?" He replied, "Because I can." Today, Taylor pleaded guilty to murder. Taylor wrote a letter which was read to the court apologising for his cowardly, unspeakable act. He said when he's released from prison, he wants to do something nice for the Maker family.
There's nothing he can do to bring William back, you know.
Tracy Moran, 7 News.
Nearly 900 cars have been seized under WA's Hoon laws this year. One of them caught speeding at 226 kilometres an hour near Mandurah. It's why the state government is pushing for tougher laws, which could see drivers permanently lose their cars after a first strike. Here's Mei Lin Chu.
A scourge on Perth streets, putting lives at risk. This Hoon was shadowed by the police helicopter through Manning.
Absolutely howling down the freeway.
He hit speeds of 206 kilometres an hour on the Kwinana freeway, more than double the limit.
How would you describe people that do this on their roads?
Selfish.
897 cars have been impounded this year under WA's Hoon laws. These 3 cars belong to one car club, and it was footage of the cars caught by this driver's very own camera that helped police catch them. Anyone caught speeding 45 kilometres over the limit is classified as a Hoon. Get caught 3 times and your car could be crushed. The state government wants that changed so Hoons who commit an offence in a school zone or who damage property will lose their car permanently after strike 1. Mei Lin Chu, 7 News.
On the fringe of a Carramar school zone, unmarked police on the lookout.
This white car coming around the corner now.
Officers spot a child in the front seat of a car not properly strapped in. It's part of an operation which nabbed 7 drivers for seatbelt offences this morning. 6 of them were unrestrained children.
It's very disturbing. I mean, why would you put your loved ones at risk? Just take that few extra seconds to make sure that they are restrained.
A Northern Suburbs childcare worker was among those busted. One of the kids in her company vehicle not properly restrained. Just around the corner, the driver of this minibus was caught not wearing a seatbelt. He was on his way to pick up children for swimming lessons.
Parents are doing the mad rush to get their children into school, and their attention is drawn elsewhere.
It's an expensive lesson for drivers if a passenger isn't wearing a seatbelt. It's a $500 fine and a loss of 4 demerit points. The impact of not properly securing children in cars has already been evident this year. An 18-month-old boy was badly hurt in this crash in Southern River in June. In the same week, a 3-year-old girl not wearing a seatbelt was lucky to escape this Belia crash alive.
And in WA, the leading cause of death from unintended injury is as a passenger in a car for children under 15.
Police say the operation will continue. Daniel Donnelly, 10 Eyewitness News.
Today Tonight. Sue and Rick, thanks. Good evening. First tonight, what really happens on Perth roads. More and more drivers are fitting their vehicles with video cameras and the results are alarming. What you're about to see was captured by one camera in one day when driving conditions were treacherous. Mark Gibson has more.
Nothing surprises me anymore, but there are a lot of bullheads out there.
You wouldn't believe some of the crazy things I see.
Remember last Friday, Perth was covered in a once-in-a-year fog. The city virtually disappeared.
Fog like that, you take your time walking, let alone in your motor car.
But it didn't stop some drivers acting like dropkicks.
With the fog came a few crazies.
Dale James has been driving trucks for more than 20 years, but what happened last week shocked even him.
Friday was just took the cake.
In one day, Dale's dash cam recorded 5 different examples of shocking driving. First, the ute driver who overtakes Dale on double white lines.
He come up behind me and without hesitation, indicator was on and around he was coming.
Moments later, the same driver overtakes another truck, but look what happens this time. He can barely see a thing, but drives straight into the path of an oncoming truck.
Unfortunately, that was a silly person meeting a silly person, because the oncoming truck only had park lights on instead of headlights, so he wasn't clearly visible in the fog. It could have been disastrous.
The fog went away, but the dumb drivers didn't.
Sure enough, just pulled out in front, just one flick of the indicator and out they came.
Watch again, it's Tonkin Highway and a 4-wheel drive pulls straight out of the emergency lane in front of Dale's truck.
I was just lucky at the time there was nothing beside me.
Same day, another driver ignores an unbroken white line to get down the hill a bit faster.
They're putting their lives in danger over 3 minutes.
And over on Belia Drive, an old Perth favourite, merging mayhem.
Everyone is always in the wrong lane. They don't know where they're going. They've got to get in front of the truck, obviously, and just the crazy merging that happens afterwards.
The scary thing is that if this happened to one driver on one day, what's happening on our roads the rest of the time that we don't even hear about?
There's these horror stories out there all the time, and these fools are driving in amongst us.
After watching the pictures, retired police traffic inspector Neil Royal was left scratching his head.
Those guys coming the other way who actually flashing their lights saying, "Oi, we're here. What are you doing, you idiot?"
A few months back, 7 News reported on this 14-year-old boy hit by a car while riding his bike. But here's the dash cam vision you haven't seen. The speed in the top left proves the driver is under the limit, but the boy rides straight out. He suffered a broken arm, while the driver was left with a $1,000 insurance bill because the boy was under 16. Finally, the driver who ignores 3 pilot vehicles, desperate to get around a very wide load, lucky to avoid a serious injury, even death.
Biggest problem is people won't get out of bed 5 minutes early. 5 minutes earlier is all you need, and get there safe.
For heaven's sake, drive responsibly, be courteous on the roads there, and drive there with the intention of getting home in one piece.
Some people just have a death wish.
And if you capture any footage on the roads, let us know. Now
to change the law has been released from prison after serving just 4 months of a 9-month sentence. Mitchell Walsh is one of the state's worst serial traffic offenders. Daniel Donnelly joins us live now. And Dan, what can you tell us?
Well, good evening, Narelda. Mitchell Walsh walked free from Werroloo Prison Farm at about 9 o'clock this morning. He was sentenced to 9 months in jail after pleading guilty to driving without a licence. He actually only spent 4 months in prison after walking free today. And remarkably, that's the longest time he's spent behind bars in his history of driving offences. This was his 7th conviction for driving without a licence, and it's an extraordinary driving record that dates back to 2003 when Walsh hit schoolgirl 10-year-old Jess Meehan as she was riding her bike across the road. Unfortunately, she died from her injuries. He was acquitted of dangerous driving causing her death, but he was found guilty of drink driving. But that wasn't his last time in court for driving offences. Walsh has been caught drink driving 7 times. The history has prompted strict release conditions from the parole board this morning. Now, that includes not consuming alcohol and not entering licensed premises, as well as random breath tests by police. But just repeating that Mitchell Walsh has walked free from Werroloo Prison Farm this morning on strict release conditions. Narelda.
Thanks, Dan. Daniel Donnelly reporting live there. Concerns are mounting over a growing trend of shocking animal cruelty in Perth. It comes as the RSPCA investigates the apparent decapitation of a black swan in a suburban park. Again, Daniel Donnelly has the story.
an iconic symbol of Western Australia. This was a familiar sight for Stirling locals, but this black swan was found dead yesterday near the water's edge at Stirling Civic Park. The bird's head had been removed in what's believed to be a targeted attack.
What makes this tragic is the fact that this animal was trusting people, and it shows again that somebody has intentionally gone and chosen this animal to do whatever they've done to it.
The friendly black swan was known to most locals who used the park.
He comes right up to the edge, so if it was a person that had done it, it wouldn't be very hard for him to hurt him, which is really sad.
We used to see the swan a lot when we used to walk around, and it's quite sad that we don't see the swan anymore.
It's disgusting that someone could do that. Yeah, it's really horrible.
The City of Stirling had the swan's remains examined by a vet who found the beheading was clean cut, meaning it was most likely caused by a human and not another animal. The RSPCA is investigating and needs anyone with information to come forward. The RSPCA says there's been a recent surge of animal cruelty cases in Perth. Yesterday, a dog was badly beaten with a hose pipe by its owner. Well, today, in another sickening attack, a neighbour is accused of throwing acid on a dog. No one has been charged yet, but anyone convicted of deliberately harming an animal faces a $50,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. Daniel Donnelly, 10 Eyewitness News.
Major crash detectives are calling for witnesses after an elderly man was hit and killed by a car in Kelmscott last night. The 85-year-old was struck near his parked car on Striker Avenue around 7:30 opposite the Good Shepherd Baptist Church. He was rushed to Armidale Hospital but died a short time later. Police have spoken to the 24-year-old driver of the Toyota Camry, but no charges have been laid. An alleged Hoon driver flipped his car at a suburban park before abandoning it early this morning. The Land Cruiser ended up on its roof after the driver did a series of burnouts, losing control at Parnham Reserve in Carlisle around 3 a.m. The grass has been left with tyre marks and some of the car's contents have spilled onto the oval. Police are hunting the driver and will investigate whether the vehicle is stolen. The town of Victoria Park will impound the four-wheel drive until its owner comes forward. British police are making arrangements to interview veteran pop star Sir Cliff Richard over
Hoon used a Land Cruiser to rip up the surface of a popular Carlisle park, doing burnouts on the grass. But the driver was caught out by his own stupidity, flipping the four-wheel drive before abandoning it.
The figure eight was almost perfect, but the landing left a lot to be desired. The Hoon behind the wheel of the four-wheel drive was caught out by his own game.
They're just morons, you know, they're people who've got no brains.
Those who live around the Oat Street Park were woken about 2:30 this morning by the sound of tyres tearing up the grass and then a bang.
No need for it, I mean, have respect for the property in the areas that you live in and other people's areas. I mean, there's no... What do they get out of it? 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, what do they get?
Police haven't been able to find the owner, so they're still not sure if the Land Cruiser was stolen. Whoever was driving was determined, knocking over a bollard so he could leave his mark on the grass beyond. By the time authorities arrived, looting had already begun. When rangers got here, they say they saw a man inside the car collecting up loose coins. And they've been told earlier in the morning 2 children were seen carrying away a small fridge. But they didn't touch the bullets found inside. Locals say Carlisle is like a speedway at night. Hoons have taken over.
Now, I mean, I get scared that they might, you know, go through and take the fence out and then straight into the kids' room or something like that and take the kids out.
Rob Scott, 7 News.
A Perth schoolboy is accused of trying to rob a service station with a gun. The 14-year-old allegedly covered his face with a balaclava and threatened workers in Gosnells. Blake Johnson reports.
Rick, police tell us the 14-year-old boy wore a balaclava as he approached the locked front doors of this Caltex on Albany Highway in Gosnells just after midnight. He allegedly pointed a fake gun at the employee inside, who then called police. The 14-year-old was charged with attempted armed robbery and was given bail today from the Children's Court in Northbridge. He was also put on a 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. curfew.
What can I say, mate? He's a silly kid and he does silly things.
Have you got anything to say, mate? Was it just a joke or was there something more serious in it?
No, I'm not going to say anything.
Police say they found the 14-year-old boy after he ran from the service station last night thanks to a police dog. It tracked his scent to a nearby park where there was a pile of curbside rubbish. He was apparently hiding amongst it.
Thanks, Blake. A serial drink driver has been released from a Perth jail after serving just 4 months behind bars. Today, tonight's cameras were there as Mitchell Walsh walked out of Woolloomooloo Prison Farm this morning. The 30-year-old has been convicted of drink driving 7 times and driving without a licence 10 times. See the full story at 6:30 straight after the news.
So Cliff Richards
may have been street racing before a horror crash that left his car wrapped around a tree this afternoon. Cindy Larenchik reports the driver
wrapped around a tree, completely caved in. The crash happened on Alexander Drive in Manoora just after midday.
80 kilometres an hour, taking in all the rain. Something gone. If it's not a mechanical fault, then it has to be other input.
The seriously injured driver was rushed to Royal Perth Hospital. Witnesses say they heard revving before seeing Nissan.
The silver car moved into the middle of the road. Car from passing him, fishtailed to the left, tried to correct himself to the right, back to the left, up the curb into the tree.
The Subaru has been seized as part of the major crash investigation. That driver, believed to be a friend of the injured man, has been over dangerous driving.
Vehicle. Speed is definitely an issue here. Wet roads, we've had some considerable rain here in the last hour, and we're just urging everyone to make sure they slow down.
Earlier, a Benaro Nurseries truck failed to make the clearance at the King William Street underpass in Bay. The lane was blocked for and emergency crews were called up for Inglewood tonight. A man is in a stable condition in hospital. Cindy Larenchik, 10 Eyewitness.
China now, Senator Jackie Lambie says we should fear invasion from Indonesia. Meanwhile, her boss, Clive Palmer, has backpedalled from his anti-Chinese spray. Adam Todd joins us from Canberra. And Adam, Mr Palmer says we've misunderstood what he meant.
When Clive talked about Chinese communist mongrels and bastards who shoot their own people, he now says he was referring to one particular Chinese he's in dispute with, not the government.
Night in Currumbine, police allege the driver of a Toyota Corolla was drinking before he lost control of the vehicle and ploughed first through a fence, then into a pillar. SES have put support beams in to keep the patio roof from falling. It happened at 1:45 this morning on Pilgrim Place. No one was inside when the crash happened.